About this alliance of tyrannies that you mentioned, another front in this growing war with that alliance, that's Israel's war with the Hamas terrorists who are backed by Iran and they control Gaza. Israel on Monday had its deadliest day since the Hamas attack that started this on October 7. 24 soldiers killed. So far, they've only managed to kill an estimated 1/3 of the Hamas soldiers. The promise was to wipe them out before they stopped. How is this war going, and how long can Israel keep it up with the US, an element of what you're suggesting already, getting exhausted with defending Israel, pushing it to stop?
They have been very successful in extinguishing most of the rockets and missile attacks that were so dominating at the beginning of the conflict. And they have taken control largely of Northern Gaza. But the reality is that there's much left to be done, obviously, with 2/3 of the fighters still remaining, and the overwhelming majority of their top echelon of leaders are still alive, and obviously in hiding and likely very close to those hostages. When you look at it and project Israel forward, they are going to be challenged to accomplish the military task assigned to the IDF by Prime Minister Netanyahu. That is to destroy Hamas, his entire fighting network and its infrastructure, and certainly remove it as a governing entity. Removing it as a governing entity is not a challenge, but destroying it is going to be a challenge. They can defeat them. And the distinction is that by not destroying them, they leave them enough leaders and enough fighters to be able to rearm and reattack. And they would consider that, Andrew, a victory because they have survived the Israelis' invasion and they have the capability to fight it again another day. And that's what the Israelis have got to be focused on.
Again, it's a story of a waning appetite for the West to prosecute a war against, wars started by these tyrannies, actually. Lastly, and on exactly that point, I don't know, General, if you've been following our government's decision to bury 45 Taipan helicopters that are decommissioned last year rather than give them to Ukraine, which says it wants them to rescue soldiers on the battlefield. Now, our government says, these Taipans are too unsafe to fly. There was a crash last year, even though we don't actually know what caused it. And it says, it's going to cost too much to get these helicopters in the air again. Your view?
Yeah, this is really a regrettable situation. I'm really stunned by it. I mean, Australia would rather just break these helicopters apart and bury them as opposed to give them to the Ukrainians who are fighting a war for their very survival. And we have noted at the Institute for the Study of War a very dramatic difference in the Ukrainians' casualties and how they're processed by comparison to what the United States and our allies did in Afghanistan and in Iraq. They don't have significant medical evacuation where you can get someone off to the battlefield very quickly, stop the bleeding, treat for shock, and then get them to a surgeon's table. That was something we were able to do quite successful in both of those wars, and they don't have that ability. So here they're asking for it. It would seem to me, at a minimum, what we could have done is just figure out, well, how many of these helicopters can we cannibalize together and ensure they have good parts? Maybe we don't give them 45, but we give them a lesser number of that. And also invite the Ukrainians over to take a look at the whole system and what we're providing them and make sure it's acceptable to them. But I think it absolutely would be, because they have nothing. And they're asking for something here. And I just can't get my head around it, Andrew, that we would rather bury these helicopters than give them to the Ukrainians for the medical evacuation of their wounded soldiers.
Well, General, you wouldn't be the only one that's just absolutely staggered by this decision. I understand at least a dozen helicopters could quite easily be reassembled and given to the Ukrainians, and an Antonov could be even sent to come and pick them up. General Jack Keane, thank you so much indeed for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Great talking to you, Andrew, as always. Thank you.